Have you ever looked around and felt that everything moves, yet nothing truly lives? That the world hums with noise, but meaning has vanished from the air? That even surrounded by light, something inside you remains dim, waiting, silent, unanswered? This restlessness you carry is not random. It is the law of vibration, moving through you without your awareness. Because the more noise you consume, the lower your frequency sinks. The more you chase connection through screens, the more invisible you feel. And the more you try to fill the silence, the louder the void becomes. But what if this void is not failure? What if it's the first signal that you're sensing the missing architecture, the hidden pattern beneath the surface chaos of your life? Because this wound is not only yours, it belongs to an entire civilization that traded wisdom for information, presence for performance, and silence for speed. We scroll to remember, but each scroll makes us forget a little more. Yet within that forgetting, something ancient stirs, a whisper that reality is not chaos. It is code, a pattern written across matter and mind. And every time you pause long enough to feel the emptiness, you are already touching the edge of that code. This is where Hermeticism returns, not as myth, not as belief, but as the forgotten map of consciousness itself. The emerald tablet, the Kabbalion, the hidden thread that once united science and spirit, a current older than empires, rising again inside your own awareness. So if you've ever felt that strange hunger for something real, for truth, for coherence, for meaning that doesn't vanish with the next notification, stay, because this is not another philosophy to learn. It's the memory of what you already are, awakening again. The ancients called this moment Nigredo, the black phase of alchemy, the collapse of all form, the disintegration of all masks, the death of all illusions. And while modern culture tells you this is depression, fatigue, burnout, the Hermetic tradition whispers something else. It whispers, what you call collapse is not the end. It's the echo before awakening. Look closer. When the silence terrifies you, it is because it threatens to show you who you are without the noise. It threatens to reveal the raw truth, that your life has been written by patterns you never chose, codes you never noticed. The great illusion trains you to confuse movement with progress, distraction with knowledge, visibility with meaning. And when silence strips all that away, you face yourself, unfiltered, unmasked, unprotected. That is why silence feels unbearable, not because it is empty, but because it is full of everything you buried, everything you avoided, everything you feared to confront. And here is the paradox. What you call emptiness is not the absence of meaning. It is the doorway to memory. The code of life, hermetic, timeless, unbreakable, is not gone. It is written beneath the chaos, beneath the noise, beneath the persona you perform each day. The silence is the portal. Jung understood this when he studied the texts of alchemy. He saw that the black phase, Nigredo, was not pathology but process. The breakdown of the ego was not destruction, but preparation. The dark night was not punishment, but initiation. And this is where Hermeticism returns, not as belief, not as religion, but as the architecture of reality itself. Mentalism, correspondence, rhythm, not slogans, not poetry, but the hidden operating system of existence. When you feel the void, you are not failing. You are hearing the first vibration of these laws moving inside you, pulling you back to memory. The code that was forgotten is calling. So I ask again, have you ever felt that silence is not absence, but presence? That the void is not death, but initiation? That the exhaustion of noise is not the end of meaning, but the beginning of memory? If you have, you are not alone. You are part of a generation standing at the threshold of the same Nigredo, the same collapse, the same initiation. Most will run back to the noise, back to the great illusion, back to the hollow safety of distraction. But a few will stay. A few will endure the silence long enough to hear the code beneath it. A few will cross. And if you are still here, listening now, then you already know which path is yours. What you call emptiness, the fatigue that lingers after every screen, the restlessness that grows even in comfort, the constant hunger for more that never satisfies. is not personal weakness. It is not failure of discipline. It is not random depression falling from nowhere. It is the collective Nigredo, the black phase of alchemy, the dark night of the soul magnified across an entire generation. For the alchemists, Nigredo was the necessary collapse, the moment when the old form dissolved, when structures rotted, when chaos devoured certainty. In their furnaces they burned the matter until it became black ash, the prima materia, the raw state from which new creation could begin. And Jung, centuries later, saw that this imagery was not about metals but about the psyche, that what the alchemists described in symbols was the same process every human must endure in the depths of the unconscious. Today, that ancient pattern has returned, not in secluded laboratories but in the everyday lives of billions. The exhaustion of modernity, the burnout of constant speed, the silent despair of scrolling endlessly without finding meaning. This is Nigredo, the putrefaction of illusions, the decomposition of identities that no longer hold, the slow death of a collective persona that has run out of masks. Look around you. People chase visibility but feel invisible. They accumulate possessions but feel poorer in spirit. They run faster and faster but feel increasingly lost. This is not coincidence. This is what it looks like when a civilization enters Nigredo. And here lies the paradox. The very symptoms that terrify us, and anxiety, emptiness, fragmentation, are not signs of collapse without purpose. They are signs of transformation pressing to begin. The blackness is not the end of meaning. It is the womb of meaning. Jung wrote that modern man suffers not from too much knowledge, but from the loss of symbolic life. We live surrounded by data, yet starved of wisdom. Our machines calculate everything, but the soul finds nothing to hold. This starvation is the Nigredo of the collective unconscious, the darkness that forces a return to forgotten codes. In the language of Hermeticism, this is the moment when correspondence is broken, when the mirror between inner and outer is denied, life collapses into fragments, work separated from soul, love separated from truth, body separated from spirit. And so the world feels meaningless because the threads of the tapestry are no longer seen as one. But listen carefully. The void you feel is not punishment. It is architecture. It is the law of rhythm manifesting in culture itself. Every cycle rises, expands, collapses, and dissolves before rebirth. And now we live in the collapse. This is why the silence of your room feels unbearable. Why your mind floods with noise when the screen is off. Why you fear to be alone with your own thoughts. Because the Nigredo has begun. Because silence reveals the cracks in the persona you built. Because emptiness exposes the illusions you mistook for truth. And the tragedy is that most will interpret this as failure. They will run from it, medicate it, bury it under distraction. They will return to the great illusion, preferring the mask to the mirror. But a few will stay. A few will endure the weight of blackness long enough to realize that this void is the furnace of transmutation. Ask yourself, why do you feel restless when everything outside seems fine? Why does comfort taste like ash? Why does silence echo louder than noise? Because your psyche knows what your ego denies. The great illusion is collapsing. The mask has cracked. The collective Nigredo has begun. And here is the truth. If you dare to remain inside this darkness, you will see that the void is not dead space. It is coded. It carries instruction. It is the ancient architecture of Hermetic law rising again from beneath the rubble of distraction. The alchemists called it Nigredo. Jung called it individuation. Hermeticism calls it the first stage of awakening. And the fact that you feel it now, that the silence presses against your chest, that the emptiness will not release you, is not accident. It is initiation. It is the summons of the code you forgot. How long will you keep feeding the great illusion? How long will you scroll endlessly, consuming fragments that promise knowledge but deliver only emptiness? How long will you allow your mind, the very architect of reality, to be reduced to an endless reaction machine, trained to obey, to repeat, to consume? The great illusion is not just distraction, it is a system. a predator that thrives on your energy. Every time you lose yourself in noise, you are paying tribute to it. Every time you surrender to comparison, anxiety, or the hunger for validation, you are kneeling before its altar. And here is the bitter truth. The illusion does not care about you. It does not care if you burn out, collapse, or dissolve into despair. It only feeds on your attention, feeds on your energy, feeds on the silence you refuse to face. Look around you. A generation running without direction. A society drowning in abundance but starving for meaning. A culture where everyone is visible but no one is truly seen. This is not chaos. This is the architecture of the great illusion. It whispers that you are free while it enslaves your focus. It tells you that you are connected while it isolates you. It convinces you that you are progressing while you circle the same dead ends. It trains you to confuse movement with growth, noise with wisdom, and distraction with life. And the longer you remain inside it, the more you forget. Forget that silence is not absence but power. Forget that the void is not death but initiation. Forget that your mind is not prisoner but creator. This is the tragedy. Most will keep serving the illusion. They will defend their chains as freedom. They will call exhaustion productivity. They will call fragmentation progress. They will laugh at the very idea that life has code, law, rhythm, architecture. But you feel the crack. You feel that something is wrong with this endless cycle. You feel the hunger that noise cannot feed, the thirst that distraction cannot quench. That is why you are here. Because deep down, you know the illusion is rotting. You sense that what you called life is a stage built of hollow images. And behind that stage, something waits. The silence that terrifies you. The void that follows you. The code that calls you. The great illusion will tell you to run from this silence, to numb it, to drown it. But every time you run, you feed it. And every time you feed it, you drift further from the truth. So the question is no longer whether the illusion exists. The question is, how long will you keep giving it your life? How long will you confuse its stage for reality? How long before you decide to turn and face the void, not as enemy but as initiation? Because only when you dare to confront the silence do you begin to see what the illusion has hidden all along. That reality is not random. It is written, and the code is waiting. You have felt the emptiness. You have seen the cracks in the great illusion. But what if I told you that what feels like chaos is not random? It is coded. That the silence pressing against you is not absence but instruction. That the void is not collapse but initiation. The ancients knew this. They called it Hermetic law, not belief, not myth. Architecture, the operating system beneath existence itself. The first principle, mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. This is not metaphor. It is the recognition that reality begins in thought. Every building was once an idea. Every revolution was once a vision. Every collapse begins in a belief. Your mind is not passenger. It is architect. And the tragedy is that, when you forget this, the illusion writes the code for you. You live not by your thoughts, but by the scripts implanted through noise. Mentalism is the sword that cuts the strings. It is the moment you realize, what I repeat inside, life echoes outside. The second principle, correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. This is not poetry. It is law. Your inner state is not private. It radiates into the field of your life. When anger repeats inside, conflict mirrors outside. When clarity stabilizes, events align. The great illusion hides this mirror, convincing you that what happens out there is disconnected from who you are. But correspondence shatters the lie. Your relationships, your health, your work are not accidents. They are reflections. The illusion collapses the moment you see the mirror. The third principle, rhythm. Everything flows, out and in. Everything has its tides. Life rises and falls. Expansion is always followed by contraction. Night is always followed by day. But the modern world tells you otherwise. endless growth, endless speed, endless performance. And so when rhythm returns, as it always does, collapse feels like failure. You mistake winter for death, forgetting it is preparation for spring. Rhythm is the shield against despair. It tells you, no loss is final, no ending absolute. The void you fear is not punishment. It is the law of rhythm at work, the necessary descent before rebirth. Do you see it now? Mentalism, correspondence, rhythm. These are not abstract theories. They are weapons, arms forged against the great illusion, the map that transforms chaos into clarity, the code that reveals meaning hidden in what seemed random. And here is the revelation. The emptiness you feared was never random. It was the first vibration of these laws moving through you. It was the signal that the code was alive, that the architecture was pressing to be remembered. The great illusion wants you to believe that silence is weakness, that emptiness is failure, that collapse is death. But Hermeticism says otherwise. Silence is portal. Emptiness is initiation. Collapse is rhythm. The code was never hidden. It breathes beneath your thoughts, shaping the world you touch. You have heard the laws. You have glimpsed the code. But if you stop here, nothing will change. The great illusion does not collapse because you understood. It collapses only when you embody. Knowledge without embodiment is still part of the illusion. It feeds the mind with words, but never touches the soul. That is why so many consume endless information about spirituality, philosophy, psychology, yet remain trapped in the same cycles, because they study the code as if it were theory, when it was always meant to be lived. And here is where initiation begins, by turning knowledge into ritual, and ritual into transformation. The first key: sit inside the silence. The great illusion has trained you to fear silence. It convinces you that silence is emptiness, that stillness is useless, that solitude is weakness. And so every time silence appears, you run to the screen, to the noise, to the endless scroll. But silence is not your enemy. It is the furnace of Nigredo, the black phase where all illusions are burned away. It is the crucible where the old dissolves, making space for the new. Tonight, when the world is quiet, resist the urge to numb yourself. Do not reach for the phone. Do not fill the gap with distraction. Sit inside the blackness. Let it press against you. Let it terrify you, because that terror is the signal that transformation has begun. Whisper to yourself, "The void is my beginning." Say it slowly, until it pierces deeper than thought. This is not a phrase, it is a seal, a key that reprograms your psyche, a reminder that what feels like absence is the womb of presence, that collapse is not punishment, but rhythm, that silence is not emptiness, but code. Stay in the silence long enough to feel its weight shift. What first feels like suffocation will begin to reveal a strange presence, a density, a vibration, because the void is never empty, it is alive. And when you endure it, you cross the first threshold. The second key: see the mirror. The great illusion wants you blind to correspondence. It tells you that what happens inside you has no connection to what happens outside, that your anxiety is personal while your environment is neutral, that your bitterness is private while your relationships are random. But the law whispers otherwise. As within, so without. Your life is the mirror of your mind. Every repeated thought, every emotion you cultivate, every vibration you feed inside yourself echoes into the field of your reality. To integrate this, pick one inner pattern. Notice one emotion that repeats: fear, anger, shame, gratitude, clarity. Then look for its reflection outside you. See how your fear shapes your choices, attracts situations, creates obstacles. See how your gratitude aligns coincidences, opens doors, softens conflict. Write it down. Do not let it pass unnoticed. This is not coincidence. It is correspondence alive. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Every person who enters your life, every conflict that repeats, every wound that resurfaces, is the mirror. The great illusion tells you they are random, unfair, accidental. But Hermetic law reveals they are reflections of the inner script you are running. Do not ask, why did they treat me this way? Ask, what part of me is being mirrored here? In that shift, you reclaim power. Because if it is mirror, it can be rewritten. And when you rewrite within, life reflects without. The third key, trust the rhythm. The illusion thrives on your panic during collapse. It tells you that when things fall apart, you have failed, that endings are final, that loss is annihilation. But Hermetic law whispers otherwise. Rhythm moves through all things. Tides rise and fall. Seasons circle. Light returns after darkness. Every cycle includes collapse, not as punishment, but as preparation. So when your relationship ends, remember, this is rhythm. When your work crumbles, whisper, this is rhythm. When your spirit feels buried, say again, this is rhythm. Because collapse is not the grave, it is the soil. Nigredo is not the end, it is the beginning. Winter is not death, it is gestation. The illusion loses its grip the moment you stand in rhythm, because you no longer fear endings. You see them as phases of the code, and when fear breaks, freedom begins. These three keys, silence, mirror, rhythm, are not exercises. They are proofs, initiations. Each one marks you as someone who refuses to serve the illusion and begins to embody the code. When you sit in silence instead of running, you starve the illusion of its greatest food, your avoidance. When you see the mirror instead of blaming, you withdraw the illusion's power to convince you that life is random. When you trust rhythm instead of panicking, you deny the illusion its strongest weapon, fear of collapse. In those choices, small as they seem, the architecture begins to shift. You notice clarity where there was noise. You feel meaning where there was emptiness. You see pattern where there was chaos. And you begin to remember that you were never passenger. You were architect all along. When the weight feels unbearable, whisper again, the void is my beginning. Repeat it until the words lose sound and become vibration. Repeat it until it echoes inside you like a drum. Repeat it until the silence itself answers back. Because this is how initiation is anchored, not by reading, but by living. Not by memorizing laws, but by embodying them. Not by running from the void, but by stepping into it with open eyes. And the moment you do, you cross. The illusion begins to dissolve, and the code begins to shine. You have walked through the silence. You have faced the void. You have heard the code whispering beneath the chaos. Now you stand at a threshold, not the end of a video, not the end of a thought, but the end of an illusion and the beginning of memory. Think of where you began, scrolling, distracted, searching, restless. You called it emptiness, you called it fatigue, you called it depression, burnout, boredom. But we named it for what it is, Nigredo, the black phase of alchemy, the breakdown that precedes transformation, the furnace where masks burn and illusions die. You felt its weight, you saw its darkness, you feared it would swallow you, but we reframed it, not as punishment, but as process, not as chaos, but as coded rhythm, not as the end, but as the beginning. From that recognition came confrontation. We named the enemy, the great illusion, the system of noise that feeds on your energy, the predator disguised as progress, the altar of distraction that consumes your focus, your silence, your very breath. And in naming it, you saw its grip. Every endless scroll, every hunger for validation, every cycle of anxiety repeating again and again. You saw the chains you once called freedom, but we did not leave you in despair. We unveiled the weapons, mentalism, the mind as architect, correspondence, life as mirror, rhythm, collapse as law, not failure. These were not theories. They were swords and shields, keys to dismantle the illusion, codes to remember the architecture, and then came the integration, silence as initiation, mirror as reflection, rhythm as proof, with the mantra whispered into the void is my beginning. Now here at this moment we gather all threads, all the silence, all the darkness, all the code, and we weave them into a single initiation, your choice. Every initiation narrows to this point, a decision, not in thought, not in curiosity, but in action. The great illusion will call you back. It will whisper, this was just another video, another philosophy, another fleeting inspiration. It will try to fold you back into its cycle, scroll again, forget again, feed it again. But initiation is marked not by what you think, but by what you do, by whether you remain in silence long enough to hear, by whether you look in the mirror long enough to recognize, by whether you trust the rhythm long enough to endure. This is the fork. Remain servant to the illusion, or begin to embody the code. Remain distracted or awaken. Remain passenger or architect. And that choice begins now. Every tradition of initiation carries a seal, a mark that says, I crossed, not as decoration, but as anchor, not as symbol for others, but as reminder for self. Here the seal is simple, a phrase. Write in the comments below, I choose to see the code. It may look simple, it may look like words on a screen, but do not underestimate ritual, because to write is to declare. To declare is to align, and to align is to anchor the law into your psyche. When you type it, something shifts. It is no longer passive listening, it is active crossing. You step out of the crowd and declare your belonging, not belonging to me, not belonging to this channel, but belonging to the code itself, to the architecture of reality, to the lineage of those who dare to remember. Write it, whisper it, live it. I choose to see the code. The great illusion thrives by isolating you. It convinces you that no one else feels what you feel, that your emptiness is unique, that your despair is failure, that your hunger for meaning is weakness. But look closer. Every comment below this video is proof. Every person who writes the seal is another who saw the same crack in the illusion, another who felt the same void pressing, another who whispered the same mantra in the dark. Together, you are not fragments. You are not anomalies. You are a movement, a community of initiates remembering the code, scattered across the world, but united by law, isolated in geography, but connected in silence. And this is the paradox the illusion fears, that the very tool it uses to distract you and the screen becomes the channel through which awakening spreads, that the same network built to enslave attention becomes the net through which the code is remembered. So when you comment, when you declare, when you write the seal, you join more than a channel. You join a temple without walls, a digital sanctuary where hermetic law is remembered and lived. But this is not the end. The code does not reveal itself in one glimpse, one silence, one ritual. It unfolds in spirals, in layers, in stages. What you have touched here is only the beginning. The Nigredo is the first phase. The laws revealed are only fragments. The integration you practiced is only the entry. The next map is waiting. The next code is prepared. And if you stop here, you will lose momentum. The illusion will call you back, louder than before. So step forward. Subscribe, not as passive act, but as declaration. A vow to walk deeper, to continue the spiral, to unfold law after law, symbol after symbol, until the architecture of your life is no longer written by the illusion, but by you. This channel is not entertainment. It is initiation. Each video is another gate, each word another key, each silence another crossing. And beyond this video lies the next stage, a deeper unveiling, a stronger weapon, a clearer mirror. So do not stop. Do not say, this was interesting. Say instead, this is my path, and walk it. If this touched something deep within you, don't let the illusion swallow it again. Anchor it now. Write in the comments, I choose to see the code. This is how you seal the initiation. Not with thought, but with declaration. Not for me, not for this channel, but for yourself. And listen carefully. Do not stop here. The next video is not just a continuation. It is more important than this one. Because if you stop now, the illusion wins. But if you keep going, the code unfolds. You are not here by accident. You are here because something inside you has already begun to change. So don't break the rhythm. Click forward. The journey is alive, and the next step is waiting for you.